Awesome. Hi, I'm David Blackmon. This is the Energy Realities Podcast. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, June 10th, in the year of our Lord 2024. I am joined here today by Tammy Nemeth, who is in an undisclosed location in Canada. Irina Slav, who is in her usual location in Bulgaria. And Stu Turley, who is hunkered down in his bunker.
Yep.
Somewhere in West Texas, I think.
I'm in West Texas, baby.
All right. Well, I'm in Mansfield, Texas. That's kind of North Texas, and the weather's good, and we're having a good time today. We've already had so much fun, it's hard to describe. So we're going to talk today, the main topic we're going to talk about today is the latest incendiary lunatic outburst by our Secretary General of the United Nations, targeting the big oil companies from last Wednesday or Thursday. But first, before we get to that, we want to have a discussion around reviewing the outcomes in the EU elections held over the weekend, because they were in some ways highly impactful and in other ways not as impactful as we might have hoped. And I think the biggest thing to me, guys, is the fact that Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, his party got so beaten down by Marine Le Pen's Conservative Party that he felt the need to call snap elections and dissolve parliament in that country. I wonder how significant, Tammy and Irina, you guys think that is. Let's go to Irina first.
Well, I think it's pretty significant. I was actually surprised he did that, but as I thought about it later, maybe it was a way to avoid unrest among citizens, because really the right-wing party won in a landslide.
Yes.
And it says a lot about any future election. This snap election is going to be interesting in France, unless the leftists, of whom France has many, don't mobilize and go to the polls. So we'll see how this goes. But it was a surprise, and it was a nice surprise. The same thing apparently happened in Belgium.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to add that. Yeah.
Go ahead, Tammy.
Yeah, the Belgian government resigned a few hours after the French government. I think what's concerning about the outcome is that Ursula von der Leyen is the representative of the center right party.
The center right,
the center right, and the EPP or whatever it's called, the European People's Party, and she's planning to still be the president. So she's looking to align. She said she's putting out an olive branch to the socialists and the people on the left instead of the people on the right. So I don't see that this is actually going to upset too much the Green Deal and the net zero trajectory in Europe. I think it just makes it a little more difficult for them to continue. That's all.
Hey, Stu, put up slide 2, that chart for a second. There we go. So here's the
change.
Yeah. So it's not really a huge change from this election.
No.
Von der Leyen's still going to have a majority. But is it going to be harder for her to just continue forcing through these authoritarian policies, you think?
I don't know. It's the European Parliament is an odd duck. How they do things, how stuff gets put together in the committees, and then it all just goes into this massive voting thing where it's an up or down. So all the work takes place in the committees, and I guess it depends on who's in the committees and all that kind of politicking and leverage and stuff. So who knows? Like you say, it hasn't really changed much. And with the proportional representation, coalitions have to be formed. So I don't know if it's really going to change that much, except that for the public, there's been this greater sense of awareness that, these policies are affecting our standard of living and our way of life, and we want to express our discontent with that. So
And
We'll
maybe
see.
if Le Pen wins the elections in France at the end of the month,
Yeah.
it will
Yeah.
make the job of the transitioners harder with a right-wing national government in France.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what
Then
about
with
the
those
media
things.
coverage of this? And on that chart, they put the non-attached members of the EC, which did expand quite a lot, or it looks to be expanding quite a lot, on the far right. Is that a fair depiction of who the non-attached members of the EC really are going to be?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea. But it's like they just kind of threw him over there on the extreme right, when like I think it was Deutsche Welle had a little also color coded thing, and they had all the from left to right in the big blue in the center, and then all of these on the extreme. It was pretty
Right.
funny.
Yeah. So it's an interesting outcome. I think for me, the thing to remember if you're in the U.S. is that the Brexit vote in 2015 was clearly a harbinger of things to come in the 2016 U.S. election when Donald Trump was elected. I would submit to everyone that this vote in Europe is reflective of more of a global shift in attitudes towards globalists in general. This wasn't just about, a lot of the media tried to portray this EU election as being almost solely about immigration, but it wasn't just about immigration. It's also clear dissatisfaction with energy and climate policies coming down from that central
And
planning
agriculture.
government.
I
And
think
agriculture.
ag has made
Yeah.
a huge impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just think this is,
Hats
we
off to
may
the
look back
farmers
on this
and their
this
poo
day
cans.
on November 5th as being a preview of things to come in America. And with that, go ahead, Stu.
I just got to give a half hat tip to all of the agricultural folks and their poo cannons. Holy smokes! Talk about a way to change somebody's opinion.
Yeah, it seems to be working pretty well, doesn't it?
Or just wait people really.
So I guess with that, we can proceed on to our next topic, which is our delightful, weird, odd leader of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, and his latest outburst targeting the oil business. What did he say? He said that the oil companies are the godfather of climate chaos, right? Godfathers of climate chaos. They rake in record profits and feast off trillions in taxpayer-funded subsidies, which is an outright bald-faced lie. And he says we need to tax them with a global windfall profit tax and disallow their advertising. What do y'all think about that?
It's great. It's a
we
wonderful idea.
Are you asking me or Tammy? Or
either one of y'all? Go ahead. Somebody. I'll pick you, Stu.
Personally, I would like to interview that gentleman, and I would also like to invite the United Nations to be thrown out of the United States. I vote on this show to not pay another dime for those guys. I think that they do not have humanitarian interests at heart. So I think that if they would live under their own ideologies, they would starve.
Oh,
And that would be a good thing.
Yeah. Clearly
so.
the health ministers could use that.
Oh, speaking of health ministers.
Oh, yes. Stu has a wonderful little
Tammy, because you are a hybrid between Canada and the UK, I tried to find Bulgaria's health minister in there, and I could not find. So all I found was another.
I have no idea who it is right now, but they seem to be normal.
So the U.S. just threw a challenge out here. So let's see who has the healthiest health minister. Okay. There's Canada. England. There's Belgium. There's the United States.
Oh my goodness. How did you get that picture of the U.S. health minister not in his admiral's uniform.
I
fake
have no
admiral
clue.
uniform.
That was out of a TikTok video.
Yeah,
I have
no.
no idea.
I vote
Well, you know-
for England's health minister. Looks to be the healthiest among those. That's my vote.
You
Well,
think I thought
Canada's.
Quebec
Go
was
ahead, Irene.
pretty good.
Who was
No,
who was
the
that?
Quebec health minister looked really, really lean and healthy and athletic too. Not to mention Belgian, the Belgian one.
Yeah. Well, the
Yeah, the
Canadian
Canadian
health
guy
minister,
looks like he could be a sumo wrestler.
the federal health minister, though, was in the House of Commons last week complaining, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, where he had that rant about the road trips and how if you go on a road
Oh
trip
my
with your family in the summer, you're burning down the planet.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah,
Yeah.
he's not as chubby, but his comments are equally in alignment with what the Secretary General said. And what's so interesting is that that speech took place at the Natural History Museum. He was introduced by Mike Bloomberg, and Mike Bloomberg was saying that his daughter is on the board of the Natural History Museum.
Oh,
And then the
God.
guy who introduced Bloomberg, who's the head of the museum, was saying how they try to incorporate climate change into their exhibits so that when all the kids come through and want to look at cool stuff about natural history, they're getting propagandized with the climate change narrative. So I thought
Wow.
that was
Yeah,
How
the
nice of him.
pervasiveness of the brainwashing is really overwhelming at this point. And rolling any of this back, people, I think, don't understand how big a job it will actually be to eventually, if we ever get to that point, by the way, if through elections we ever get to the point where that's even possible, rolling things like this kind of stuff back is going to be a monumental task, possibly unprecedented, because it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah,
And,
they're trying to out-alarm each other.
right.
Like,
And that's the whole purpose of Guterres' rhetoric, isn't it?
yeah, and what Tammy just said about the federal health minister, was it the health minister?
it was the health minister.
They're trying to be as scary as possible and, keep upping the ante, verbally at least. It's a competition. It has become a competition. It's,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's beyond belief.
No, I wrote a story back in February, after Guterres made his speech at the WEF when he rolled out the highway to hell narrative. How do you ever top that? How do you top the highway to hell? And I'm not sure Godfathers of Climate Chaos actually tops highway to hell.
I think
it's
us
actually
being
a
the
step
meteor
back.
that wiped out the dinosaurs tops that.
Oh, and that's the part we need to actually, I really want to focus on that part. And this is a direct quote from Guterres' speech. In the case of the climate, we are not the dinosaurs, we are the meteor. We are not only in danger, we are the danger. Isn't that him giving a nod to the Malthusian monsters who are an increasingly big part of the climate alarm movement?
I think he mixed his metaphors, because if he says we're not only in danger, which the dinosaurs were, but before that he said we're not the dinosaurs. We're the meteor and we're both in danger and we are the danger. So the meteor was in danger. I mean, I was trained to do that. I was trained to pick metaphors. And he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah. I kind of took it as an
I think he
argument
just
for
enjoys-
population reduction.
I don't think he will. You're giving him too much credit. I
Okay,
think he
all
just liked the sound of his own voice. He liked how the dinosaurs and the meteor sound. He thought it was scary and impressive and poetic, and I'm sure he was patting himself on the back for the godfathers of climate chaos. Although I'm actually sure he doesn't write his speeches himself.
No.
So it's just an exercise in speech, in figurative language with zero substance behind it.
Okay. Well, then you taught me down off
Which
the
is
ledge.
worse than what you say, actually.
I would add that it's also the venue, right? He's speaking at the Natural History Museum, And so then I think they wanted to include some kind of reference to the, what's happened on the planet naturally while the
Right.
meteor crashing in and causing all the devastation and whatnot. And everybody kind of knows that, oh my gosh, it killed a bunch of stuff. And so then we're the ones killing all the stuff.
Yeah, but the meteor was natural. It just happened.
Right. I know. But
This
see,
is exactly
his
what
point
I'm
is we're
talking
doing
about.
it intentionally. We're like the meteor, but we're intentional instead of accidental or whatever, natural.
Yeah, they just don't
Yeah, I
think
know.
through the things they write in
Yeah, but
speeches.
see, you're a thinking person. The person who's just kind of hearing the rhetoric, are they putting that kind of thought into it, or are they just like, oh my gosh, yeah, we're a meteor. We're gonna wipe stuff
Yeah,
out.
if they're really zombified, but I think a lot of people have had enough with this rhetoric because it's exhausting. You can't continue
is
being
exhausting.
scared all the time. And you've got these people, I don't know if I mentioned it, but my Twitter feed is now full of climate activists for some reason. I have no
Really?
idea. I do not follow these people. And it's the same message over and over again. We should be scared. We should be very, very scared. And I see it in the comments. People have had enough. You can't keep this up forever.
Well, Irina, you know why that's happening on your Twitter feed, right? It's because
Yeah.
you can go up at the top of the screen and you can either have it give you results from people you're following, Twitter accounts you're following, or Twitter will curate the
I
feed
know,
for
but
you.
I
And you're
know.
probably on that setting.
Yes, but I have been on that setting forever. I haven't changed any of my settings, but I'm starting to see the alarmists now. They must have changed something. Twitter must have changed something. I don't know.
They're probably
But it
kicking
was
up. Yeah.
educational.
Well, I mean, we're getting closer and closer to an election in the United States, and they're probably kicking up, ramping things up in anticipation of the election.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, over the last couple of years, I've noticed. Of course, I don't. I pretty carefully curate my own Twitter feed, but I have noticed fewer and fewer people calling me names on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I've wondered why that's been the case, because 2-3 years ago, man, pretty much everybody who replied to me on LinkedIn called me a, what do they call it? A climate denier. And, yeah,
oil shill, probably.
Yeah. Oil shill and, all that stuff.
I just called you
that
jerk.
hardly ever happens anymore. I guess maybe they just got tired because I never responded to them. What, Stu?
I just called you a jerk. But
yeah,
then I steal your material.
Yeah, I get that at
all
home
the hecklers on my side go, Stuart, why are you even alive? You steal everybody's information.
I Tom Mumford an apology, by the way. David, when you say leader, the quotations implied I have no leader. I should have included the word nominal before leader. He's the nominal leader of the UN. But that's an excellent point, Tom.
And he agrees with me, so thank you, Tom.
Well, okay. But he did even better with Irina.
Oh yeah, he goes, yay,
bravo, Irina.
What did I say? I have no idea what I said.
I don't know.
Thank you.
We love Irina. And now for Tom, this one was very important. I'm too
to the propagandized comment. My wife and I stay attuned to what our woke schools are pushing. Narratives become dinner time talking points, and our kids are equipped to fend for themselves as they leave the nest. Yes, my daughter does the same thing with her daughters who are in junior high. Yeah.
Can I add to the Guterres thing? Because when I was going through his speech, a couple of things jumped out at me, and that is number one. Near the top, he talked about how the G7 and OECD must reduce oil and gas supply and demand. So he's talking about that you got to keep it in the ground, not just try to curb the demand for it. So then that will, of course, increase prices and make people more dependent on the Middle East and Russia and whatever else. And then the other thing was this UN Climate Promise Initiative, and where they say that every city, region, industry, financial institution, and company must be part of the solution. So then I assume they have to take like a pledge or something
The
to commit
climate
to these
pledge.
different things.
Tommy, you just gave them an idea. You know, people, we need to be careful about this because we are giving them ideas. We are joking, we are mocking them, but these are to them ideas. I mean, think about all the insane things they're doing.
Yeah. Oh,
We joke about, they sound like a joke because they're so insane, but I fully expect in a few months that there will be a climate pledge.
Yeah, we're like their training manual, right? Which doctor is more appropriate for Guterres?
Well, unfortunately, with the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, they do take a pledge, and all these financial institutions pledge to do this. They sign a document that says they're committed. And in one of the articles that I put up for discussion today, Gina Papano in Canada, who's the head of Invest now, went to the shareholder meetings, put forward proposals for them to stop net zero or whatever. And the responses she got back were actually quite shocking, where they basically said they're prepared to drop clients if that they deem are insufficiently committed to net zero, and that they will prioritize supporting clients actively engaged in the energy transition. So here we have major Canadian banks, and you can't do anything in this world without a bank account.
Right.
And here they are saying, well, we'll debank you if we don't think that your transition plan is credible or you're not committed to net zero. And to me, that's just frightening. And that's actually what Guterres is talking about when he mentions climate finance. It's about shifting all that money out of oil and gas into whatever they've defined as transition companies.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. On your comment about what Gutierrez's comment about OECD nations needing to reduce both demand and supply of oil and coal, that's a direct attack on the United States, which is the biggest producer of oil and I think coal on the planet. And it's also a direct attack on developing countries who need the oil and natural gas and coal to develop their own economies. And this is, part of the plan to deny those developing nations the access to the same affordable and abundant energy sources that we in the OECD nations have used to develop our own economies. I mean, it's really an evil thing.
It's a control mechanism because if the World Economic Forum and the World Monetary Fund would actually loan money to do what Africa needs to do, look at how much resources they could do and do Africa first, drill their own oil, drill their own resources, manufacture their own things, have their own jobs, and then export those materials. Holy smokes, Africa would eliminate huge amounts of energy poverty and elevate people out of poverty. Oh, they'd also make a lot of people a lot of money through trade. Sorry.
But you're assuming the money would get to the right people. I think the problem with these international funding organizations, it ends up like the Gaza Pier. What happened to all the supplies that were meant for the people, the Palestinian people? It just kind of vanished. So I think that's unfortunately sometimes the way that goes in developing nations. So I don't know what the solution is to that, except to help individuals like Jasper.
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt here because Tammy is going to have to go. She is keynote speaker at a convention up in Canada today. And but before you go, we should talk about the headlines Tammy wanted to comment about in this episode, Stu. There we go.
Well, I already talked about the banks one, and if I could just go a little bit further. So when Guterres was talking about all these different things that he wants the fossil fuel companies to do, and one of them was to stop advertising, right? Is that he's calling on ad firms to cancel their contracts with oil and gas companies. I think that's pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
Right. And that, but the Canadian government went one step further, and I didn't put it in an article here, but they inserted 2 paragraphs into a piece of legislation in the Competition Act that will basically ban oil and gas companies from talking about anything they're doing related to the transition or any progress that they're making towards net zero. It basically stops them unless they can confirm what they're doing has been certified by some international methodology, which is undefined.
Yeah.
So, but it affects not just oil and gas companies, but technically any company that's doing anything in the transition. They could be held liable, and it's like millions of dollars in fines if they're found guilty of being misleading or whatever, which can be interpreted very broadly.
Wow.
And then the other article there, which I thought was hilarious. So this Polish candidate was complaining that the reason why people aren't accepting the Green Deal is that the communications plan was faulty.
Of course.
You know, it's not that people can't afford to live or heat their house or anything. No, that's not it. They just didn't communicate it properly.
Yeah.
It's the same playbook over and over, and it's the same thing they say about communism. Well, communism, socialism, whatever you want to call it, didn't work because you didn't talk about it right and you didn't do it right. We'll do it
You
right.
didn't
We'll
do it
talk
right.
about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, those are my things.
Oh, Tammy, you also had one other one. You had another.
Right. So this was
Oh,
my
yeah.
piece in the Financial Post last week, which was about the
Fantastic.
Canadian Sustainability Standards Board and their new climate accounting rules. And it was open for comments. It closes today, actually, for comments. And it basically aligns with what Guterres was saying, what he wants financial institutions to do, because he talked about having these transition plans. And one of the key elements of these standards is companies have to have these transition plans. They have to show progress that they're actually meeting their targets, and they have to quantify all their emissions. And so when Mark Carney was testifying before the Canadian Senate, he was talking about how important it was to have this emissions data, because there's $143 trillion in the world that asset managers have that they are ready to shift, but they just need the data.
Right.
So it's funny because you had the article there about how ESG funds have been declining because, it's not a really good return on investment, but yet they are ready to shift 143 trillion into transition companies that they just don't know about yet. They need all this emissions data to know what's a good transition company.
And the truth is they're ready to shift it all into those kinds of investments if they can just hide the lower returns from their own investors.
Right. Well,
that's the truth.
because they'll undermine those companies that would have the good returns, right? If Guterres is saying oil and gas, you can't advertise, you need to invest in the transition and all that, well, then that makes those companies unprofitable. So then the only game in town are the transition companies.
Right.
Yeah, but they can't stand on their 2 feet, and asset managers can keep funding them forever. Hasn't anybody thought about that? Or is this?
But
it's inconvenient to think about that.
They just haven't put enough money in, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, I have to go. Thank you so much for being a great host, David, and great to see you all. And I'll tune in and hear what you guys had to say a little bit later.
Break a
Bye.
leg.
Have a good time.
Thanks.
You will do
Thank you.
great.
Bye.
Okay, with that,